Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, my amendment would prevent any of the provisions of the Sea Act from being applied to the Pacific Ocean. Now, this bill guts core provisions of the Marine Mammal Protection Act in order to expedite the oil and gas exploration and other industrial activities, subjecting America's marine mammals to needless harm and making it far more likely that their populations will become threatened or endangered in the future. It's a giveaway to the oil and gas industry that allows for drilling no matter the environmental or economic cost. The explorative activities that the Sea Act encourages, such as seismic air gun surveys, represents the first step towards increasing oil and gas drilling operations. This is especially troubling prospects for those of us on the Pacific Coast. Now, last week, the Trump administration announced their new draft offshore leasing plan, one that includes the Pacific Ocean, a radical departure from previous Republican Democratic administrations. This means that for the first time in more than 30 years, California's coastline could be sold off for future fossil fuel development. Now, I hope my concerns here are moot. Just last night, Secretary Zinke announced he was removing Florida from considering any new oil and gas platforms because the state is, quote, unique and, quote, heavily reliant on tourism as an economic driver, unquote. Now, coastal tourism in California is unparalleled. It contributes $17.6 billion to our economy annually. Now, our state and local leaders are unified in their opposition to drilling, and I expect nothing less than equal treatment from Secretary Zinke and anticipate his removal of California from consideration as well. Now, I was glad to see that there's bipartisan support from at least one of my colleagues in Congress who has stepped up for the California coastline. I hope my Republican counterparts here in this committee will do the same thing as we saw happen in Florida on a bipartisan basis. The congressional colleagues there stepped up and helped to get this done. I know I have at least two of my colleagues here and hope that they will join that effort and follow the lead sent by Florida Republicans to help out the Pacific Ocean. Now, just in case anyone needs additional convincing, history has shown that offshore drilling inevitably leads to oil spills. This is something Californians learned firsthand in 1969 when a massive oil spill in Santa Barbara helped give rise to the modern environmental movement. We were reminded of that grim reality again in 2015 with the Refugio oil spill in that same region. New offshore drilling would threaten to upend our thriving fishing, tourism, and recreational economies and jeopardize our irreplaceable coastal resources. Then there is the health impacts. Offshore oil and gas production in California already disproportionately and negatively harms communities of color, such as the ones I represent. You know, in my district, in the 44th, oil refineries are adjacent to backyards and in parks where children play. The breathing pollution from oil drilling operations and suffering the health impacts such as asthma and respiratory problems. Expanding offshore oil production in California's water would only increase the supply to oil refineries within the state, exacerbating this public health crisis. Now, the vast majority, 69% of Californians, strongly oppose new oil and gas drilling off of the coast. This is not to mention that the impact that increased oil and gas drilling operations would have on climate change, which is being driven almost entirely by human actions, such as the burning of fossil fuels, and is already resulting in rising sea levels and ocean acidification. This amendment reflects the will of the vast majority of Californians by saying to the oil and gas industry, our coastline is not open to more of your polluting activities. And with that, I yield back.